She lied about being a widow to keep her apartment. Then the CEO landlord found out. Emma Carter had learned to fear envelopes. Not all envelopes, of course. Birthday cards were fine. Preschool drawings folded in half were fine. Even medical bills had become familiar enough to qualify as annoying rather than terrifying. But anything with the logo of Whitmore Residential Group printed in the corner had the power to stop her breathing. That morning, the envelope sat on the kitchen counter like a loaded weapon. Emma stood across from it in her faded pajama pants, one hand gripping a mug of coffee she had reheated twice and still hadn't drunk. Outside their rent-controlled apartment in Boston, buses hissed along the wet street, horns barked, and the upstairs neighbor's toddler performed what sounded like a tap dance routine with a frying pan. Normal morning chaos, except for the envelope. Noah, her 8-year-old son, wandered in wearing one sneaker, a dinosaur t-shirt, and the expression of a boy who had never once considered the cost of being alive. He looked at the letter, then at his mother. "Mom," he said carefully, "are you playing the lottery or about to have a heart attack?" Emma blinked. "What? That's your lottery face." "I don't have a lottery face." "You do. It's the same face you made when Grandma sent us that scratch ticket and you won $3. That was a big day for this family." Noah climbed onto a chair and grabbed a banana from the fruit bowl. "So what's in the scary mail?" Emma turned the envelope over before he could read it. "Grown-up nonsense. That means money. Usually. Is it bad money?" Emma forced a smile. "There's no such thing as good money, baby. Only money that leaves slower." Noah accepted this as one of those depressing adult truths and went back to his banana. Emma waited until he left for school before opening the letter. Her fingers already knew. They trembled before her mind caught up. The notice was brief, polite, cold. She was required to appear at the Whitmore Residential Administrative Office regarding a discrepancy in her tenancy records. Failure to attend could result in review of her housing status. A discrepancy, such a small word for a lie that had fed her son, sheltered him, given him the same bedroom for 5 straight years. Emma sat down slowly. 5 years ago, Noah had been 3, tiny, feverish, still asking when Daddy was coming home. His father, Daniel, had not died. He had simply disappeared with the efficiency of a man who had practiced leaving in his heart long before his body followed. No child support. No phone calls, no birthday cards, no apology. When the housing review came, Emma had stared at the form until the words blurred. Marital status. Widowed, divorced, separated. She had known the truth. She had also known that separated meant unstable household status. More questions. More documentation. More chances to be removed from the rent-controlled unit she had fought desperately to keep. So she checked the box. Widowed. One lie, one roof, one child who did not have to sleep in a car again. Across town, Ryan Whitmore stood on the 43rd floor of the Whitmore Residential Headquarters, looking down at Boston like it was a ledger that had not yet balanced. At 37, he had inherited not only his father's company, but his father's enemies, lawsuits, old favors, political debts, and a reputation polished so brightly it reflected nothing human. His father had been dead for 6 months. Ryan had spent those 6 months cutting through departments, restructuring contracts, firing executives who smiled too much, and repeating the one sentence he believed with almost religious devotion. The system is only fair when everyone follows the same rules. That morning, his compliance director placed a file on his desk. Carter Emma, Unit 4B, rent-controlled tenancy. Declared widow with dependent child during review 5 years ago. Ryan opened the file, and the woman hesitated. Her husband appears to be alive. Ryan looked up. He filed taxes in New Hampshire last year. Same social security record, same marriage certificate. No death certificate. Ryan's expression did not change, but something in the room sharpened. Was this an error? We don't think so. He turned a page. Emma Carter's photo was clipped to the application. Young, tired eyes, brown hair pulled back, a child on her hip. Ryan had seen hundreds of these files. Need was not rare. Desperation was not rare. Fraud, unfortunately, was not rare either. Begin formal review, he said. Schedule an interview. She has a child. So do many people on the waiting list. The compliance director said nothing. Ryan closed the file. Rules are not cruelty. Selective enforcement is. 3 days later, Emma sat across from him in a glass-walled conference room that seemed designed to make poor people feel transparent. Ryan Whitmore was not what she expected. She had imagined older, soft around the middle, maybe red-faced, maybe loud. Instead, he was controlled and severe, with a dark suit, clean hands, and eyes that looked as if they had never had to count quarters in a grocery line. He placed her file on the table. No small talk, no mercy disguised as manners. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "your housing status was granted under false information." Emma kept her spine straight. "I don't understand." He opened the folder and slid one document forward. "Your husband isn't dead. The room went silent. For a moment, Emma heard nothing but her own pulse, then Noah's voice in her memory, scary mail. She looked at the paper, Daniel's name, Daniel's tax record. Proof that a man could abandon a family and still exist when it was a time to ruin them. Ryan waited. Emma could lie again. She had become good at it in small ways. I'm fine, we're managing. Noah doesn't need new shoes yet, I'm not scared. But something in her was too tired. She lifted her eyes. That's true, she said quietly. But my son's father died a long time ago. Ryan's jaw tightened. That is not what the form asked. No, Emma said. It asked for a word clean enough to fit inside a box. His expression hardened. You knowingly submitted false information, yes. And kept a rent-controlled apartment under eligibility you may not have qualified for. Yes. Her honesty seemed to irritate him more than denial would have. Do you understand what happens now? Emma swallowed. She thought of Noah's dinosaur t-shirt, his crooked school projects taped to the fridge, the blue wall beside his bed where they had measured his height every birthday. Yes, she said. I think I do. Ryan closed the file. Whitmore Residential will begin termination proceedings. You'll receive formal notice. 30 days. Emma nodded once because if she moved too much, she might fall apart. At the door, she stopped. Mr. Whitmore, he looked up. I know what I did was wrong, she said. But I need you to understand something. His face remained unreadable. I didn't lie because I wanted more than I deserved. I lied because every honest option I had led to my son losing his home. Ryan said nothing. Emma left the room that afternoon. The eviction notice was issued. 30 days. For the first time in 5 years, Emma came home and looked at the apartment not as a shelter, but as something already slipping out of her hands. Ryan Whitmore had expected Emma Carter's file to become simpler the deeper he looked. Fraud usually did. A false statement, a missing document, a benefit gained, a rule broken, simple. But Emma's file did not simplify, it expanded. By the end of the week, Ryan had 3 folders on his desk instead of 1. The first contained her original tenancy records. The second contained employment history, income verification, school transfers, and court attempts to locate Daniel Carter for child support. The third was unofficial, gathered from old municipal records and a private investigator's summary Ryan had not meant to read twice. Emma had lived in her car for 11 weeks before moving into Unit 4B. Noah had attended 3 different preschools before kindergarten. Emma's childhood address, once part of a working-class neighborhood in South Boston, had been demolished years ago during a redevelopment project led by Whitmore Residential's predecessor company. Ryan stared at that last page longer than he wanted to admit. His father's signature appeared on the approval memorandum. Not criminal, not illegal, not even unusual, just profitable. Ryan closed the folder and told himself it changed nothing. Emma had lied. Other applicants had followed the rules and waited. Fairness required enforcement, especially when enforcement was uncomfortable. Still, he began visiting the building. At first, he came with a property manager and a clipboard. The official reason was unit inspection, compliance verification, tenant interviews. The unofficial reason had no name he was willing to use. The building was old but alive. Radiators clanked. Children raced down stairwells despite signs warning them not to. Someone on the 3rd floor cooked garlic-heavy dinners that filled the hall by 6 every evening. The elevator worked with the confidence of a dying animal. Emma's apartment was small, clean, and clearly held together by discipline more than money. A repaired kitchen chair, a couch with 1 sunken cushion, Noah's drawings taped near the window, a jar labeled Emergency Pizza Fund, containing mostly pennies and 1 button. Emma treated Ryan with careful politeness, the kind that created distance sharper than anger. She answered questions, provided documents, signed acknowledgments. She did not beg, that bothered him. He had accepted pleading, excuses, maybe manipulation. Instead, she behaved like someone already standing at the edge of a cliff, too proud to ask the man behind her not to push. Noah, however, had no such restraint. He appeared one afternoon while Ryan was speaking with the property manager in the hall, wearing a backpack nearly as large as his torso. 7, you're the landlord boss, Noah said. Ryan looked down. Something like that. Noah studied his shoes, his watch, his coat. Are you rich like you can buy an island, or rich like you can get extra guacamole without checking the price? For the first time in recent memory, Ryan had no prepared answer. The property manager coughed into her hand. Ryan said, the second one, definitely. Noah nodded, impressed. That's still pretty rich. Emma appeared behind him, mortified. No, what? I'm gathering information. Ryan should have found it inappropriate. Instead, against his better judgment, he almost smiled. The visits continued. Ryan noticed things he had trained himself not to notice. Emma returning home in scrubs, shoulders stiff from work, then kneeling to help Noah with math before removing her shoes. Emma calculating grocery totals in her head before reaching the register. Emma laughing when Noah accidentally called broccoli tiny angry trees, though she looked one unexpected bill away from breaking. And he noticed the building itself. Most of the tenants were not cheating the system. They were surviving inside it. Elderly residents who could not afford market rent, home health aides, bus drivers. A retired janitor who still polished the lobby mirror because he said a building should know somebody loves it. Ryan had inherited spreadsheets. Emma lived among consequences. The more he saw, the harder it became to reduce her to a violation code. Still he tried. Rules were not feelings. Rules were how strangers were protected from favoritism. If Emma stayed because she was sympathetic, then what about the family who had not lied? What about the mother on the waiting list? What about the veteran in temporary housing? Compassion, Ryan believed, could become corruption when applied selectively. Then one rainy evening, he arrived to find Noah sitting on the front steps beneath the awning, waiting for Emma to finish speaking with a neighbor. His sneakers were untied. His backpack rested beside him. Ryan paused, unsure whether to pass. Noah looked up. "If we get kicked out," he asked, "do you have a cheaper place for us?" The question landed without drama. That made it worse. Ryan could have explained market conditions, availability, eligibility, relocation procedures. He could have mentioned waiting lists, shelters, nonprofit referrals, school district disruptions, the formal language adults used to make failure sound organized. But the boy had not asked for a policy. He had asked for a place. Ryan looked toward the street, where traffic blurred through the rain. Noah added, "Quieter. Mom says we'll figure it out. But that's what she says when she doesn't know." For once, Ryan felt the full uselessness of power without an answer. He had the authority to remove them. He did not have somewhere safe to send them. That night, Ryan remained in his office long after the building lights had dimmed across the city. Emma's file lay open beside a stack of pending eviction approvals. He reviewed the legal basis again. It was sound, clean, defensible. Then he placed a hold on the termination. Not a reversal, not forgiveness, a delay. The email was brief. Further review required before final action. The response from the board came within an hour. First from legal, then compliance, then Evelyn Marsh, chair of the Housing Oversight Committee, who wrote that selective hesitation created reputational exposure and operational risk. By morning, 3 directors had requested an emergency call. Ryan stood at his office window, watching Boston wake beneath a pale gray sky. For the first time since taking control of Whitmore Residential, he understood that the rules he trusted had never been neutral. They simply sounded neutral when spoken from high enough above the ground. The hold on Emma Carter's eviction was supposed to be temporary. Ryan told the board it was a procedural pause, a compliance review. Nothing emotional, nothing personal. He told himself the same thing. But by the 3rd night he was in the basement archive of Whitmore Residential, reading files old enough to smell like dust and bad decisions. The redevelopment project had a clean name, Harbor Line Renewal Initiative. It sounded civic-minded, hopeful even. In reality, it had been a profitable displacement machine. Ryan read page after page, acquisition maps, tenant relocation notices, public-private partnership agreements, projected revenue increases. His father's signature appeared again and again with the same confident flourish. Then he found the list of displaced households. Carter, Louise. Dependent, Emma Carter, age 12. Address, 18 Mercer Row. Ryan stopped breathing for a moment. Emma had not simply been affected by housing instability. She had been shaped by Whitmore decisions before she ever signed one of his leases. The next day, he drove to see his mother. Diane Whitmore lived in a quiet house outside the city, surrounded by old books, framed charity awards, and the kind of silence wealthy families called peace. She listened as Ryan described the file. She did not look surprised. "Your father believed neighborhoods were numbers waiting to improve," she said. Ryan's throat tightened. "Did you know about the Carters?" "I knew about many families." "And you said nothing?" Diane looked at him sadly. "I said things. Your father was very good at hearing only profit." The answer did not absolve her. It did not absolve him either. That evening, Ryan went to Emma's building without calling first. He found her in the courtyard, trying to fix Noah's bike chain while wearing work scrubs and the expression of a woman one inconvenience away from committing a felony. Noah supervised from the stairs. "You're doing it wrong," he informed her. "I gave birth to you," Emma said. "I can handle a bicycle. You cried building my bookshelf." That bookshelf had emotional problems. Ryan almost smiled. But the file in his coat pocket felt too heavy. Emma saw him and stood. Something in his face warned her before he spoke. "What is it?" she asked. He told her. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough. Mercer Row, the renewal project, his father's signature, her mother's name in the relocation file. Emma's expression changed slowly. as if the present had reached back and struck the 12-year-old girl still living somewhere inside her. My mother cried in the bathroom so I wouldn't hear, she said. We moved into my aunt's dining room. I slept beside stacked chairs for 7 months. Ryan said nothing. I thought your company entered my life 5 years ago, she continued. But it was already there. It was there when I lost my first home. I didn't know, Ryan said. Emma laughed once without humor. That must be comfortable. He accepted the blow because it was true. She stepped closer, eyes bright with anger. You sit in rooms and call it policy. My mother called it packing boxes at midnight. I'm not my father. No, Emma said. You're better dressed, more polite. You use softer words. But you still showed up ready to take away my home and call it fairness. Ryan had spent his life mastering restraint. It failed him then, not as anger but as shame. I don't know everything he did, he said, but I know I benefited from it, and I can't keep pretending that's neutral. Emma looked away first. The courtyard had gone quiet except for Noah spinning the loose bicycle pedal with one finger, pretending not to listen. Something passed between Emma and Ryan then. Not forgiveness, not trust, but recognition, the painful kind. The kind that arrives when two people realize their lives have been connected far longer than their feelings. Over the next week, Ryan returned less officially and more honestly. He helped Noah fix the bike, though he got chain grease on a shirt expensive enough to make Emma visibly suffer. Noah asked if rich people had special laundry. Ryan said, dry cleaning. Noah nodded. So yes, Emma tried not to laugh, failed. The romance between them did not bloom like a flower. It behaved more like a bruise, tender, darkening, impossible to ignore. Ryan brought old relocation files. Emma brought memories. They argued over responsibility, law, survival, and whether apology meant anything when the damage had already compounded into adulthood. And still, she began to see him trying, not performing, trying. One night, as rain tapped against the lobby windows, Ryan admitted what cost him most. I wanted to believe I was a good man because I didn't create the worst parts of this company. Emma studied him. But I inherited them, he said, and I protected them because they were useful. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. It was small, brief, dangerous, but it happened. The next morning, the story broke. A local housing reporter had received leaked documents from someone inside Whitmore Residential. Emma's false widow claim, Ryan's eviction hold, photographs of him leaving her building after dark. By noon, the headline was everywhere. CEO falls for tenant who lied on housing application. The article was worse than the headline. It painted Emma as a manipulator, Ryan as compromised, and Whitmore Residential as a company rotting under emotional favoritism. Comment sections filled with strangers deciding who Emma was: fraud victim, gold digger, bad mother, survivor, liar. Noah saw none of it because Emma took his tablet away and told him the internet had a stomach bug. By evening, Ryan was summoned to an emergency board meeting. The directors did not shout. That made it colder. They spoke of governance, optics, legal exposure, investor confidence. They said Emma's case had become a symbol. If Ryan protected her now, every enforcement action would be questioned. Every tenant dispute would become a scandal. At last, Evelyn Marsh placed both hands on the conference table. You have two choices, she said. Remove the tenant or remove yourself. Ryan looked at the faces around him. For the first time, he understood the machine completely. It did not require cruelty, only compliance, and now it wanted proof that he still belonged to it. Ryan did not sleep for 2 nights. He sat in his office surrounded by legal memos, tenant histories, board demands, and the photograph from the article. Him leaving Emma's building with his coat collar turned up against the rain. It looked guilty because in some ways it was. Not guilty of what the headline suggested. Guilty of caring. That apparently was the greater corporate crime. He tried to find a solution that would satisfy everyone. A transfer offer, a hardship exception, a temporary subsidy routed through a nonprofit. A settlement that admitted nothing and saved Emma's apartment. Every option collapsed under legal review. Too preferential, too risky, too visible. The board wanted a clean sacrifice. Emma's eviction would prove Ryan had not lost control. It would reassure investors that compassion had not infected governance. By the third evening, Emma knew. She always knew when adults were building decisions around her. She had developed the skill young, back when landlords spoke to her mother in lowered voices and pretended children did not understand the sound of losing a home. Ryan came to her apartment after Noah was asleep. The place was dim except for the lamp near the couch. Noah's school backpack leaned against the wall. A half-finished dinosaur puzzle covered the coffee table. On the refrigerator, the height marks rose in pencil like proof that childhood had happened here. Emma stood barefoot in the kitchen, arms folded. You look terrible, she said. I'm aware. Good. I'd hate for that information to be wasted. He almost laughed. Almost, then silence settled between them. Ryan told her everything, the board's demand, the legal barriers, the threat to remove him as CEO. He did not soften it. Emma listened without interrupting, her face still in the way people look when they are forcing themselves not to feel too much at once. When he finished, she looked towards Noah's closed bedroom door. "You can't throw away your company because of me. It isn't because of you." "Yes, it is," she said, "and because of your father, and because of mine leaving, and because of 100 things that were broken before we met. But in that boardroom, they'll call it me." Ryan stepped closer. "Let them." Emma shook her head. "You think losing power will make you clean. It won't. It'll just make you unemployed and noble. Those are two things men in expensive coats confuse all the time." The remark was sharp enough to be funny. Neither of them smiled. Ryan looked around the room. The patched couch, the tiny shoes by the door, the rent-controlled apartment she had lied to keep, the home he had once reduced to a violation. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. That confession hurt more than any threat. Emma's eyes softened despite herself. For weeks they had argued with words like law, fairness, harm, responsibility. But beneath all of it lived something simpler and more dangerous. Two tired people who had seen each other too clearly to walk away unchanged. Emma moved first, not far, just close enough for the space between them to become a decision. "I'm angry at you," she whispered. "I know. I don't trust you completely. I know. And I really hate that you make your coffee order sound like a quarterly report." His mouth twitched. "That feels unrelated." "It's very related." Then she kissed him. It was not the kind of kiss that solved anything. It did not erase the eviction notice or the lie or the dead weight of both their father's choices. It was uncertain, aching, almost careful. A first kiss built not from victory but fear. When Ryan touched her face, Emma leaned into him for one fragile second as if she had been strong for so long that resting felt like betrayal. Then she pulled away. "No, it can't be your scandal," she said. "He isn't. I can't be your redemption story either." Ryan had no answer. The next morning, Emma began packing. She did not tell Ryan. She told Noah they were going to stay with a friend for a while, which was technically true if one stretched the definition of friend to include a former coworker with a pile-out couch and 2 cats who hated children on principle. Noah cried quietly while putting his books into grocery bags. Emma did not cry until she took down the pencil marks from the refrigerator by photographing them one by one. By noon, the apartment was nearly empty. By evening, she was gone. Ryan arrived just after sunset with a folder under his arm. One more desperate proposal he already knew might fail. The door was unlocked. Inside, the apartment echoed. No couch, no drawings, no backpack by the wall, no dinosaur puzzle. Only the small blue bicycle remained near the window, the one Ryan had helped fix, its chain newly repaired and its handlebars turned slightly toward the door, as if waiting for Noah to come running back. Ryan stood in the empty room. For the first time in his adult life, power felt not heavy, but useless. He called Emma. No answer. He called again. Nothing. On the kitchen counter, she had left the keys and a note written in her careful, slanted handwriting. "Don't lose everything because I lied, and don't pretend this makes us even." Emma Ryan read it twice. Then he folded it and put it in his coat pocket like evidence. That night, he returned to the archives, not because he knew what he was looking for, but because grief had sharpened into suspicion. Emma had lied. That part was true. But systems produced patterns. Ryan believed in patterns. His father had taught him that, though not in the way he intended. By dawn, Ryan had compliance reports spread across 3 tables: hardship claims, incomplete marital records, undisclosed occupants, incorrect income estimates, guardianship inconsistencies, residents who had bent language, hidden separations, delayed paperwork, exaggerated dependency, minimized wages. Not 10, hundreds. Emma Card was not an exception, she was a symptom. Ryan stared at the files as the morning light crept over the city. The board had wanted him to choose between Emma and his position, but the truth was larger and more damning than either of them. Whitmore Residential had built a housing system so narrow that ordinary people had learned to twist themselves into acceptable shapes just to remain inside it. Ryan did not fight the board in private. Private rooms were where Whitmore Residential had learned to make public suffering sound efficient. So he called a public hearing. Tenants came, reporters came, board members came with their faces arranged into careful disapproval. Emma sat near the back, Noah beside her, his small hand tucked inside hers. Ryan stood at the front with no dramatic speech prepared, only files. Hundreds of them. He presented the data plainly. Over the past decade, Whitmore's housing reviews had produced a pattern. Residents hiding informal separations, underreporting unstable income, delaying custody updates, exaggerating dependency status, inventing cleaner categories for messy lives. The board called it fraud. Ryan called it predictable. Evelyn Marsh demanded that Emma Carter be removed immediately to restore trust in the system. Ryan looked toward Emma. She did not look innocent. That mattered. She looked tired, ashamed, proud, afraid human. Then Ryan faced the room. Emma Carter lied, he said. That was wrong. The room stilled. But if hundreds of ordinary people keep making the same wrong choice, maybe the problem is no longer only the individual. No one spoke, Ryan continued. He did not ask that Emma be excused. He asked that the policy be changed. Emma received an administrative penalty. She had to repay a portion through a long-term plan and resubmit her housing file truthfully, but she was not evicted. The board accepted the reform proposal by one vote. Ryan resigned the next morning, not as a martyr, not as a hero, simply as a man who had finally understood that staying in power sometimes meant protecting the machine from the truth. 1 year later, Ryan ran a community housing fund out of a modest brick office with bad coffee and honest lighting. Emma worked there part-time as a resident advocate, helping people fill out forms without having to sand down their lives into lies. Noah still called Ryan the grumpy landlord. Ryan always corrected him, former grumpy landlord. Noah considered that, still emotionally landlord-shaped. Emma laughed from her desk. Ryan looked at her then, not as someone he had saved. That's not someone who had saved him. They were simply two people who had inherited broken things and chosen, imperfectly, to stop passing them on. And maybe that was love. Not rescue, not forgiveness without cost, but the quiet decision to build a home where the truth could finally fit through the door. Before you go, think about this. If you had been Emma, would you have told the truth and risked losing your child's home? Or would you have made the same choice she did? There are stories that entertain us, and there are stories that quietly follow us long after they end. I think this one belongs to the second kind, because somewhere tonight someone is still choosing between dignity and survival. Someone is still trying to protect a child. Someone is still carrying a secret they never wanted to tell. And someone is still hoping that being understood might matter more than being judged. Thank you for listening to Soul-Stirring Stories. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, be kind to others, and whenever possible, be kind to the struggles you cannot see.